Antifa.
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 Antifa. Antifa.
Antifa.
They are a terrorist group, and we are coming after them.
But they have been very threatening to people, but we're going to be very threatening to them, far more threatening to them than they ever were with us.
This is Antifa, short for anti-fascist, a name that's been dominating headlines recently. Following the media attention, US President Donald Trump designated the group as a domestic terrorist organization in an executive order in late September. The order came after the killing of far-right activist Charlie Kirk, and it was a pledge from Trump's first term as president. But the group's controversial history dates back to well before then and extends beyond US soil. Here's its history. Antifa isn't a single group.
These are agitators, anarchists, and they're paid. And you'll find that out.
It's a decentralized and leaderless movement consisting of so-called anti-fascist activists who organize in local networks and social media hubs against the far right.
These are bad people. These are people that want to destroy our country. We're not going to let it happen. The epidemic of left-wing violence and Antifa-inspired terror has been escalating for nearly a decade.
Over the past decade, Antifa was most visible in US cities like Portland and Seattle. In 2017, about 100 masked activists wearing Antifa symbols clashed with right-wing protesters in Berkeley, California, leading to multiple arrests. In 2020, amid the unrest following George Floyd's brutal killing, self-described Antifa member Michael Renault shot a supporter of far-right group Patriot Prayer and was later killed by police. Antifa activists have used lasers against police drones, doxed officers' personal details online, and circulated anarchist flyers.
They've used armed gangs to assault local police in cities nationwide, and they've attacked journalists reporting on their crimes.
On October 8, Trump took their status to another level, pledging to designate the group as a foreign terrorist organization.
Antifa?
A foreign terror organization.
Well, has that been done? Pretty close, right? Would you like to see it done?
Yes, Mr. President.
Do you think it would help?
They have foreign links
I'd be glad
all
to
across
do it.
Western
I think it's
Europe.
the kind of thing I'd like to do. If you'd like, does
Middle
everybody
East.
agree? If you agree, I agree. Let's get it done.
Here's where that foreign connection is tied to. These are Antifa members alongside YPG, the Syrian branch of PKK, a terrorist organization recognized by Turkey, the EU, the US, NATO, and several other countries around the world. To understand the context behind this bizarre partnership, thousands of kilometers away from US soil, we need to go back a decade, from 2014 to 2019, as Daesh seized large areas in Iraq and Syria. The United States turned to the YPG, which then rebranded itself as the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces in 2015.
I was on the formative stage of the relationship with these guys. They formerly called themselves the YPG, who the Turks would say equated to the PKK. You're dealing with a terrorist enemy of mine. How can you do that, ally? So we literally played back to them that you got to change your brand. What do you want to call yourself besides the YPG? And with about a day's notice, they declared that they were the Syrian Democratic Forces.
Despite repeated warnings from NATO member Turkey about YPG's affiliation with PKK, the United States continued to back the YPG in its fight against Daesh. Both the PKK and its Syrian branch are not only responsible for killing thousands of civilians across Turkey and Syria, but were also repeatedly found to be recruiting child soldiers. Investigations by Rolling Stone and CNN found that some American Antifa sympathizers had traveled to Syria to join the YPG. Those activists informally referred to one cohort as the Antifa platoon. One named case is Bruce Belden, a self-described leftist from California. He fought with the YPG in 2016 and later discussed the combat skills he gained with the terror group.
I originally wanted to go as a civilian. I realized that was harder than I thought. And the only way I could get there was by joining the YPG.
Ankara directly confronted YPG/PKK forces that included such foreign terrorists during its cross-border counter-terrorism operations in northern Syria.
People use this sort of privileged discourse, or like stay in your lane discourse, about people going out there. But the fact of the matter is that the YPG have a dedicated office to having Westerners come out there.
Turkish officials say Washington's partnership with the YPG has effectively normalized terrorism and helped create a pipeline of trained fighters heading back to the West, who are joining a group that is now regarded as a left-wing terror threat in the US, one that explicitly calls for the overthrow of the US government. Antifa's recent history and US attempts to label it a terrorist organization constitute a contradiction. At home, the current administration seeks to brand Antifa as terrorists. Abroad, the same country had previously armed and trained the PKK/YPG, which later trained Antifa. This is not without precedent. US policy has, at times, empowered non-state armed groups for near-term gains, and later confronted the blowback. In Afghanistan, the US supported armed groups in the 1980s to counter the Soviet presence. Later, some members of those groups became part of Al-Qaeda, which became public enemy number one for the country after 9/11.
The people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago. And we did it because we were locked in this struggle with the Soviet Union. They invaded Afghanistan, and we did not want to see them control Central Asia.
Lastly, in Syria, it's armed groups that are recognized as terrorists by Turkey and internationally, leading to an uncomfortable question. If Americans trained by US-backed militants in Syria are now called terrorists, does that mean Washington outsourced its own terrorist group to wreak havoc on its own soil?
They're an organized, systemic, international criminal enterprise. And what the FBI is going to do is trace the money, follow the funds, and find every single person that was involved in funding the riots and the violent acts of criminality that they're perpetrating on our streets.
So the country has to answer another question. What happens when foreign terrorist tactics are used at home?